Today we're going to try to replace a lower radiator mounting bracket on a 2012 Vauxhall Astra J hatchback with a 1.6 liter petrol engine and automatic transmission. If you have a Vauxhall Astra, you know it's a great car to learn how to work on because almost everything will go wrong on it, and you don't really care if you wreck it too bad. This is covered, there's a Vauxhall manual entry on how to do this, but it suggests removing the front bumper. That seems like a lot of trouble, so we're going to try to do this avoiding that. And also this repair is not covered in the Haynes manual. So what I'm hoping we can do is remove two bolts, rotate it around, and get it off the radiator, and pop the new piece in. It looks like you need a 13 millimeter, the bolts are 13 millimeters to remove those, and the torque specification is 16 foot-pounds to put those back in. So we'll see how this goes. So this is our starting point, and I'm looking down at the front of the engine bay on the driver's side, and when I was checking oil, I noticed that this bracket here is totally disintegrated, has sheared off. Looks like there's a coolant link onto it, which has caused it to disintegrate, so of course that's a reason for concern, and we'll check that out, but I haven't had any issues with coolant levels. So what I'm going to do to start is spray these down with WD-40 to try to make sure that they come out easy, and then once I get these pulled out, clean this area up, try to twist this about 90 degrees and try to get it off. This is the new bracket that we'll be installing. I found this on Amazon. You search for Vauxhall Astra lower radiator bracket and enter your car. This one was about 13 pounds 50, somewhere in that range, and it came within 24 hours, so really good. This is where our two bolts will go, so if the passenger portion of the vehicle is up here and the front of the vehicle is up here, it'll sit in like this. This is where those two bolts into the subframe are, and this grommet is where the radiator sits. And it looks like there's these two lips here where probably something from the radiator will hook into that. So what we're going to do is try to pop it onto the radiator like that, and then rotate it around to catch those bolt holes. So we'll see how that goes. We're also probably going to put some dish soap in here to make that slide into the radiator easier. Okay, so we've given the penetrating oil time to set in, so we're going to loosen up these bolts. I've also tried to support the radiator while I take out this bracket with some zip ties, so I've just run that down under the pipe for the lower radiator hose, and then up into the body at the front of the engine bay to hopefully support that a little bit and keep from breaking it. I have already broken these two bolts that I'm going to remove loose with a breaker bar. They were in pretty tight. Again, I used a 13 millimeter end socket on that. So I'm going to back those out. All right, so here's the old bracket. It really wasn't too bad once you get the bolts out. It sits really loose. I did twist it around. I'm not sure that was necessary. You can see the various places I'm starting to bleed from banging myself, as you'd expect. But I did rotate it around and then pried it off. I was trying to be pretty delicate, but as usual, I failed with being pretty delicate. This grommet was in pretty tight. Once I pulled the grommet out of this, and so then this was stuck on the radiator, and I got a pair of slip joint pliers. And I was eventually able to pull that around, and as far as I know, I haven't done any damage. There wasn't a bunch of coolant dumping out of the bottom of the radiator. Okay, so here's again our replacement part, and compare it to the old one. Looks like a good fit, especially because this part is not broken up. Since that grommet was so hard to get in, soap it up just a bit. Hope that makes it slide on a bit easier. We're here under the car at the point where we're going to replace it. So we're going to orient it this way to go up toward the vehicle. And that right there is what we're going to slide this rubber grommet here on. So trying to get the angle to see that. We'll pop it on right there. And it's actually gone on really easy. So that soap was the right thing to do. And then try to rotate it around. It's working, so I just need to get it up over that lip, and there, that should be pretty well in position. So now you can see it's seated, rubber grommet is seated on this plug. That's what the radiator is sitting on, and then this end, this is the subframe here, and this is what we've been looking down on where we remove that bolts, and then it just kind of sits on top of this plastic cover. Here's the piece from the top. See, it's sitting a little bit off, but should be able to manipulate that around. These are our bolts. They were super rusty, so I don't know if this is really required. I'm going to put just a bit of copper grease on them. Torque specification is 16 foot-pounds, 22 nanometers. So this actually might kind of cause you to over-tighten, so maybe this is a terrible idea. But you know, those look like pretty prime candidates to seize up, especially if there's another coolant leak. They seem like unnecessarily long bolts for something that's going to rot away. All right, so got it in. It took kind of forever to get the torque settings good, but really it's probably a waste of time. I mean, the only function of this thing is to sit on the frame. So honestly, as long as you get the bolts on there tight enough so that the thing doesn't move around and stays flat, it's probably doing its job. But again, 16 foot-pounds, 22 nanometers for the torque wrench settings. It's just kind of a long process because there's not a lot of room in there to get your torque wrench pushed back enough to actually ratchet. But there it is. It looks like job done. Need to remember to take off the zip ties. Here it is from the bottom, still nice and soapy, and hopefully sitting right on everything where it's supposed to sit.